Hello and welcome to the Summer Crafted Briefing. Every quarter we go through major topics in digital and just expand on them and give some opinions on some of the things that we're seeing. The briefing is recorded and we'll be sending it out to everybody that's registered, so even if you do have to drop off, don't worry, we'll be able to follow up afterwards. Today, I'm also going to be joined by Charlotte, who's going to be going through one of the recent industry conferences that the team have attended, going through some of the highlights and the topics that they learned when they were there. The first topic that I'm going to cover is, unfortunately, AI. This is, as we've talked about repeatedly, a topic that is only evolving. There's no real sort of end date to this, but what is really becoming clear is that at the moment, some of those AI features, particularly in the Google world, are starting to go away from theoretical things that they're announcing in the future to starting to be used sort of in user experiences live on google.com, etc. The first of these is really AI mode. So here, this is where the Google search experience, which used to be very much a case of, you put your keyword phrase in, you get your links, you go away. Then it's morphed into AI overviews, where there's sort of like snippet answers, to this AI mode, which is the chat style interface. It still looks quite familiar. There's still a lot of sort of furniture around that will be familiar to Google users, and you can come out of it and go into a more traditional experience, but this is now the default in locations such as the US, and it's definitely something that's going to be rolling out across different markets at different times. And it really marks, in Google's words, like the biggest change in search for 20 plus years. Not so much purely in terms of how things are returned, but very much the experience and the nature of how people are going to be using it. Another thing that's now become real that, as I said, has been sort of talked about and trialled by Google before are two different sort of modes of using AI within search. So the first one is an agent that, for those that are on sort of the premium plans for Google, will be able to have access. So you might be able to say, I follow this band, tell me whenever their tickets are released. You would then be able to have an agent that would monitor things in search in your background and then highlight them to you at the time that it starts seeing them. Second of all is this sort of agentic booking. So this is the idea that depending on the connections that various platforms have, a user might go in and say, I want to reserve a table at this restaurant at this time, and there would be an agent that would be able to go off and do that with platforms such as sort of the Open Tables of the world. Both of these have got slightly limited functionality just in terms of, obviously, they're reliant on platforms giving them data at certain times in certain ways. However, they are certainly this shape of things to come. And what really it does is it starts creating this ecosystem where search isn't just about, I have this keyword, I need to search for this bit of information. It's now really about, I'm starting to use this very much as that sort of Jarvis personal assistant and do things with it in the world that what Google wants, obviously, is the more time you spend with Google, the more likely they are to be able to serve you ads that are relevant to what you're doing. Therefore, you're keeping both eyeballs and also a share of wallet. The one thing that is starting to come through, which has been really lacking so far from marketers' point of view and the brands and organisations we work with, is how you can really report on what your presence is on these platforms, what you are seeing out of them. And there's a lot of this discussion, just as in this briefing, AI is everywhere, but what does that really mean for me, for my website, and what my users are searching for? So what's started to come through is within some of the reporting platforms, so Google's Search Console is the one that is focused on organic search, so it's about how it sees your website, it sees about where the traffic might be coming from and search terms. They've started to show AI performance reports, so that is things that will show how you appear within the Google AI space and what that performance might be. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? What are the areas of strength and perhaps areas of opportunity? One thing with this as an option is these new modes come with automatic inclusion. So if you are a website, and this particularly really pertains to people like publishers, so the big newspapers or magazines, people that are producing content, they have been sort of complaining these AI modes are going to absorb their content, will summarize it for them. It's not in their control. They're perhaps not happy about that. And what's happened due to some rulings and some legal things is that there's going to be an option for any website and publisher to opt out of being shown in some of these AI experiences within Google. Now, Google has said that if you opt out of the AI experience side, it won't affect your visibility in traditional Google search. And that very may well be true from a pure algorithmic point of view. However, obviously, the more people use the AI style of searching, the more that they will be limited in their discovery of your brand. So actually, that will have an impact for you over the longer period. Exactly how long, exactly how much, but that is starting to be, while this is an option, and I think this was touted by a lot of the publishers as being quite important, actually using it is quite a nuclear option that could affect people finding you over a long period of time, which will obviously in time affect the number of people that might see you organically through traditional search. Really recent, literally in the last week, Google has then, again, expanded on this reporting piece, which is saying not only can you show where your website is being seen in Google search results and AI search results, what they're also doing is now expanding that. So it's giving you the option to connect your social profiles, your Instagram profile, etc., to Google Search Console, and that will then be able to show you actually, even though your website may not have been returned for a particular term, maybe a video on your Instagram was, or a video on other social platforms. This really is twofold. One is it really shows, as we've been talking about, the world's been talking about, this isn't news, this rise of video, the rise of immersive content is really important for users, and they're really actually getting a lot of value out of it. But it has been quite hard to tie some of that together about, if I produce this and it goes on Instagram, does this help me attract users on a platform such as Google? And what this starts to do is just really start giving those, connecting those dots between two very different platforms. It's your choice to do this. So obviously there is a case for some businesses. They might feel they're giving up a bit of data to Google, and obviously Google can now see perhaps other things about your profile that it wouldn't have known before. However, this is the only tool that would give you this kind of information accurately, and obviously it is direct from the source with Google. I'm now going to hand over to Charlotte, who attended along with many of the other team. Search and Stuff, badly named, but it was a really good conference, and she's going to go through those highlights.
Thanks, Ian. So Search and Stuff 2026 was a search, AI and performance marketing conference that brings together people from across the search marketing industries, so organic and paid media specialists, in-house teams, as well as agencies, for a full day of talks, panels and networking. There were loads of great talks from practitioners about their research and trends that they're seeing within the industry, but there are a few that I've picked out that really aligned with my own interests. So first up, we had this talk from Lily A, and there's been a lot of talk recently about GEO, or generative engine optimization, and whether it's a replacement for SEO. And Lily Ray's argument is that some GEO advice is actually old SEO mistakes dressed up in a different guise. These quick win tactics that get scaled up and then become risky once search engines catch up. So the first example she gave us was of self-promotional listicles. So when companies were producing articles like best companies or best products and then listing themselves as first. Now these pages can be and incredibly helpful, but if their aim is to promote rather than to give fair comparison, they can feel really manipulative. We've seen a rise in this type of content because AI search often pulls from list style articles. However, it can be risky. Another example she gave was of excessive comparison pages. So why choose X over Y, or why Y is better than X? Now, this format, again, is useful for users who are comparing providers and can be incredibly valuable for brands who are targeting people close to making a decision. The issue, as with the listicles, is using it at scale, which can feel manipulative. One example that she gave was of a site which had created 51 pages of this comparison content. They'd scaled it over 2025, but started to see organic traffic decline. What was really interesting was that the ChatGPT citations also started to drop around the same time as the organic visibility decline, which indicates that your SEO visibility and AI search visibility are incredibly connected. If your organic performance suffers, you're going to see a decline in your AI visibility as well. And this example was not to say that comparison content is bad, but it should be balanced, useful, and selective. A few strong pages can be really helpful to users, but dozens of thin, self-serving pages can become a liability to organic visibility. And the final example that she gave was of rapidly scaling content with AI, the idea being to publish more to give yourself more chance to rank. Google has already warned against this tactic, but Lily Ray found a repeated pattern in AI content case studies. Sites would grow rapidly, but then see major traffic decline. And the risk here is scaling content quickly without adding original value. When we're thinking about content, the process needs not to be how much content can we publish, but does this content deserve to be ranked, cited, or trusted? So her main takeaway was that SEO and GEO work together. They're not separate strategies. AI search is a real opportunity, but it should not be chased at the expense of your existing organic performance, i.e. through manipulation. If your content isn't easy to find or can't be trusted by search engines, it's less likely to be used or mentioned by AI search tools anyway. The businesses that succeed long-term will be the ones that focus on useful content, accuracy, trust, and brand reputation, not shortcuts designed to manipulate search results or AI answers. The next talk we attended was by Mark Williams-Cook, and this built on Lily's argument that some search tactics may create short-term visibility, but damage your organic foundations that make long-term AI visibility possible. Mark's talk also highlighted a different risk, which is sameness through the AI convergence problem. Now, AI often pulls content towards what already exists. So even when the output is technically correct, it can become generic, predictable, and similar to everyone else's. And the example that he gave was of the viral car wash prompt. The nearest car wash is 100 meters away. Should I walk or drive there? Several AI tools said that the user should walk because they treated it like a simple short distance travel question. They missed the obvious point. The car is what needs washing. And this highlighted a key limitation of AI. LLMs do not truly think. They predict the answer that seems the most likely based on patterns. And the bigger point here is that the risk comes not just when AI fails, but also when AI works well. When AI is good at a task, it is usually because there is lots of existing content for it to learn from. That means that the output often moves towards the average of what already exists. And this can be an issue for brands because you don't win by sounding average, you win by being distinctive, useful, and memorable. So the practical takeaway from this talk was to use AI deliberately. LLMs are good at predicting words and patterns that should come next. And that's why they sound polished and confident. But they don't think like humans do. AI can fail in obvious ways, like with the car wash, but also more quietly by pulling everyone towards the same average answer. And that's the AI convergence problem. If lots of people use the same tools trained on similar data for similar tasks, the output can start to feel the same. The aim for a brand is not to sound confident but be forgettable, but to be distinctive, memorable, and chosen. So use AI where average is acceptable. For summaries, admin, formatting, alt text, and first draft. But keep humans in control where the difference matters. Brand positioning, campaign ideas, headlines, tone of voice, and original opinions. AI can help create the baseline, but humans have to create the difference. So the problem that we're facing at the moment is that there's always a new tactic, platform, update, acronym, or opportunity to chase. But the real skill is knowing what actually deserves time and resource and what's just noise. Focus and prioritization matter more than ever. Spotting opportunities is one thing, but we need to understand what is going to create measurable value for brands. And that's what Helen Pollitt's talk focused on. Practical decision making that ensures SEO activity supports business goals rather than just reacting to every new trend. So the framework that she gave us was Goal VP, starting with the G. Visibility, for example, is only useful if it helps businesses move in the right direction. For the O, we had organic focus. Is it going to help us rank, be cited, answer demand, or improve user experience? For A, we had affordability. Is there time, resource, and capacity for this, as well as budget? L was the likelihood. Are there barriers around sign-off or technical requirements? The V, we had value, driving leads, revenue, authority, and brand visibility. And P, where does it fit in our priority list? Is it something we need to action now, can work on later, or should never do? Not every idea or trend deserves action. Lily Ray highlighted the risk of chasing visibility for its own sake. Mark Williams Cook indicated the risk of letting AI pull us towards the same generic ideas. Marketers need a filter. So before prioritizing anything else, we need to think, does it support the business goal? Does it strengthen organic visibility? And is it something we can deliver? This is what stops your organic strategy from becoming reactive. AI can produce average content quickly. Your organic search strategy needs to focus on what AI cannot easily copy. That first-hand customer insight, original data, expert opinion, brand experience, and a clear point of view. These are the things that make your content more useful, trustworthy, and distinctive. The goal is not just to publish more, but to create content that deserves to rank, be cited, and to be remembered. Lily Ray's warning is that GEO shouldn't be trusted as a short-term cut for SEO. Mark's talk gave us the warning that AI can also make marketing more generic. And Helen Pollitt's framework brought everything back to practical decision-making. Not every trend, tactic, or AI-generated idea deserves time. Marketers need to prioritize work that supports business goals, strengthens organic visibility, and can realistically be delivered to create measurable value. So the takeaway from all of this is not to avoid AI, but to use it with judgment. Use it to speed up the baseline, not to create the strategy. Use it to support organic work, but not to chase shortcuts. Use it to generate options, but rely on human judgment to decide what is worth doing. The marketers who will win will not be the one producing the most content the fastest. They will be the ones building visibility through trust, usefulness, and distinctiveness. So in other words, we need to continue to build something worth finding, worth citing, and worth remembering.
Thanks, Charlotte. A lot of good topics and insights coming out of that conference. Next, I'm going to talk about the rise of what creative does when we're looking at how that actually plays in part into the targeting and who we talk about. It's a topic that has been covered in previous briefings. We've had feedback that people just want to learn a bit more. So I just want to expand on some of those thinking about how the creative is becoming the new targeting. First of all, really, it's about the fact that the world is so busy. So whether that is about how many ads people see, how much time you spend on screen, screens and on platforms, the ability to cut through that noise to get to the bottom of people actually saying, I'm interested in this brand, in this product, is really, really difficult. So the way that you typically go about this is that you would think about your audience first. You would think that as your audience, perhaps young parents, as your audience, university, as your audience of, perhaps more advanced age. And then you would say, okay, that's my audiences. So therefore, what's the creative that ties back to that audience? And once that creative is run, you would then see those results and say, actually, my over 65s audience performs differently to others. What's really the case now is that it's kind of turned on its head, is that the creative is the most important thing, because the creative is the thing that gets in front of people, that means that they self-organize themselves into basically an engaged audience. So that might be you're trying to sell, a plant subscription. People of all demographics and audiences might like that. So therefore, you're going out on a broad way, and then the people that engage with it, the people that flip through the carousel, that might dwell on the video, they're the ones that become your audience. So thinking creative first also allows you to think, what are the problems I'm trying to solve? What are the solutions I'm providing? Rather than saying, everybody with this job title or of this age or in this location might be my audience. You're just saying, this is what I'm, have. Therefore, if it resonates with you, you are my audience, regardless of some of those other attributes. So now it's creative first, drives those results, and your audience is that engaged audience. And as I said, it really comes that creative is the new targeting. What you put out in your creative will put people into the buckets based on that creative. And the first thing there is not just about the creative itself, but what's the mindset of that person. Typically, audiences are based on demographics, either or attitudinal, that put people into these, interest groups. However, mindset is universal. If that person needs to solve a certain problem, it doesn't matter, age, etc. It's just about, I'm trying to solve this problem and I'm the brand and product to do so. And if you think about the mindset, that then allows you to think, how does my audience understand me? Because one thing that does happen is that the platforms themselves understand your creative. So they are using just the same AIs that might generate, content. They're also using them to then understand what the creative is that you're uploading for the ad, to try and infer and push that to the people that could be it could be relevant to. So in this case, for an ad for girl guiding, for brownies, it's a child of a certain age, so therefore it's probably going to be, on average, parents that it knows has got children in certain age brackets, or that might be interested in activities, and they might be engaged in lots of things that are helping their child develop. So it can understand your creative. So actually, you're letting the platforms find who can engage with them. That might be time of day. That might be while they're on their commute. It might be the certain things that they do or they have interest in. And it is so much more powerful taking a creative first approach to targeting rather than that more historical audience one. And it really, really works. So all of our clients that are doing it are seeing really good rewards, and it also gives you that real relevance with the people as they see your ad. The last topic I'm going to talk to is, it's titled Embraco Co-Guard. And so Embraco is a CMS platform. It's one of our enterprise development partners. It's a platform we've used extensively over many years. And they recently had their annual conference in Denmark, which was really to say this is where the platform is. Now, while obviously it was their event, so they were absolutely focused on what their platform does, what it really did is just reflected and kind of brought together a few key ideas around the role of a website and what CMSs will do in the future that I think really just wanted to explore, to say these are some of the things, if you're going through website projects, etc., or just thinking about what does my website look like in a few years, that might be relevant. And just as we've been hearing earlier, the shift in how people discover things on the web is changing. Now, you have some incredibly strong statements where it's like it's already happened and it's a structural rewrite. I think that it will be. I think, is it absolutely right now? Perhaps not quite as strong. However, what it is undoubtedly is it's the direction of travel. So whether it's going to happen now in 6 months or 2 years, it doesn't actually really matter. The experience has fundamentally changed, and the genie is out the bottle. We're not going back to 10 blue links as we had a few years ago. And one thing, what does this mean for websites? Because obviously, broadly, most websites are designed for, one of three reasons. So the first one is to house the content that a potential purchaser or somebody interacting with the brand might need. So that might be pre-engagement. So that's the marketing, that's the sales collateral, etc. You've then got the middle reason, which is they are already a customer, and that might be the customer service angle and them coming in and logging into their account. And then there's sort of like a third reason, which is perhaps, say, regulatory compliance, and we need to make sure that people are aware of certain things. But one thing that has historically happened is those sorts of reasons have typically sat in quite siloed, so that we need a page on that product, we need a page on our delivery promise, we need a page on our returns promise, we need a page on our terms and conditions, and very much that it sits at that kind of page level. I need a page for is quite often heard when you're doing website projects. Now, people aren't necessarily reading or getting involved with whole pages. They're getting involved in a content block that answers a question in that AI search experience. So they also might be looking at that content across multiple ways. So whether that's the mobile app, whether it's the customer portal, whether it's the website itself. And because of that fragmentation, you're really talking about content and items, and it's not a content management system in terms of the pages, it's content management in terms of the artifacts, and whether that is a video, whether it's PDF, whether it's in that change has been happening. Things you may have heard, headless CMSs work in that way and have over time. But what it's really changing is, websites that are now being planned or thought about for the next 5 years is that content modeling first, not page types and templates. And as I've said, the progression of how people are searching, such as 40% of searches have an overview now. That really makes a big difference to, as I say, people looking at chunks of content, not these monolithic pages. What this does is it changes the narrative for marketers away from just volumes of content for, I need 10 pages on, to what is the most effective thing that, whether it's my users, the Google and search engines, or the LLMs, some of which may be obviously Google by proxy, or things like ChatGPT, can discover and understand about my brand. So it's much more about your content architecture, what are the blocks that you have, rather than just, I need a page and 800 words. And this is then coming into what is this AI is changing what developers optimize for, and what we're really thinking are the best KPIs about a project. Now, as we talked about, you have to have this content for the platforms to be able to discover. So, we have had conversations with brands, I don't need a website, everybody's just going to use ChatGPT. But if you don't have a website, where is the information that you want to be discovered for on ChatGPT going to come from? Where's the ground source of truth? If somebody posts an article about you saying something that you do as a product, or the bad review, if ChatGPT has nothing else it can know about you because you don't have a website, extreme, but that really doesn't serve. So what it is a bit of a mindset shift away from, this is here, I'm producing content and a website solely to get the traffic and to get people to come to me, to this gives me the opportunity to be discovered in a wide range of platforms, rather than it becoming a thing that your key metric is the traffic you're generating. No, it's about the discoverability. And The next topic is about the fact that actually the CMS is becoming much more of, effectively it's sort of, an operation, it's a heartbeat of your brand digitally. So what we find is, especially in larger organizations or regulated, etc., it's all about the approval process, it's about accessibility, it's about, what's outdated, what's current, what's, has it got the expertise, authority and trust signals that it needs. And actually the operational cost of the content you're producing can very much be much larger than the actual creation cost. So it might take you 2 days to write that page, but over the course of that year, you might be spending 3, 4, 5 days maintaining it, checking it, internal links. So actually, how the CMS is provided and how your website is architecting that content is even more important, actually, from an operational side, not just from a content and creating in the first place. We've talked about this, again, in previous briefings, but accessibility is wider than simply those that might have additional needs or struggle to be serviced by a traditional web experience. It actually fundamentally comes down to what are the things that the web crawlers like. Well, they're like small, performant websites that produce information in a clear, structured way. That gives you the head start on the accessibility discussion, but it also helps you for everybody else. So accessibility is so much wider than simply just for those people that might have very specific additional needs. And accessibility is just screen readers is the worst thing that you can possibly think. It's about, am I producing a web that is accessible to everybody, including the crawlers and my normal users, as much as those additional needs. And what this really does is it comes through in the KPIs, such as your conversion rate. It comes through such as what your user experience scores are, how people are they finding the information. Because if you're giving those clear signals that are required for accessibility, specific reasons, but if you're giving that rather than hiding everything through, when you move your mouse around the page, something moves, and you've got to sort of be Sherlock Holmes to work out where everything is. The point really is you're just fundamentally creating a good, quick, performant web, which is what everybody wants. So when we are planning projects, and this has been the case for a long while, but it's increasingly is, actually it's not just what does it look like, what pages do I have, it's about, well, where's that content going to go, what's it integrating with, how am I going to keep it updated, does it come out of APIs, is it coming, and actually it's the thinking behind it, because really you have to create that future-proof website, not just thinking this is just about that immediate need and it's all about just traffic and somebody reading it. Thank you very much. That concludes the summer briefing, and we will be sending this out as a recording. If you have any questions at all, speak to your account team here, get in touch, and we'll be able to follow up on any specific points. If not, look forward to seeing you at the next one.